updates on digital technology around us, discussing the latest developments and how technology can enrich you and make your life more exciting. Citizens Tech Talk with Mena. Welcome to our world of technology. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12. Citizens Tech Talk with Mena, expanding our global reach through technology.
Abuja, plus including our surrounding areas.
The Citizens Tech Talk with Mena, bringing you news updates on digital technology around us, discussing the latest developments and how technology can enrich you and make your life more exciting. Citizens Tech Talk with Mena. Welcome to our world of technology. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12. Citizens Tech Talk with Mena, expanding our global reach through technology.
A very, very good morning to you and welcome to Citizens Tech Talk with Mena. I am your host.
Today we are going to be talking about startups and how startups usually go about accessing funds to finance their businesses. Hello, Vivian. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great. It's great to have you back.
Same. I'm happy to be here.
All right, let's get into it. Firstly, can you tell us in plain terms what a startup business is?
Okay, so great question. The thing with definitions, particularly as they relate to startup, is that there really isn't one definition of a startup. But I mean, we can associate different words to like a startup. So when you think of words like young, innovative, companies, small, these are all words that are associated with startups. So, I mean, from these, we can then define startups as companies that are in their infancy and usually founded by one or more people with the aim of providing some sort of unique service or product. Now, generally, startups are considered innovative and they can even be disruptive in any industry they find themselves in. And when I say disruptive, positive disruption. I mean, in recent years, a lot of startups have been involved in automating services and revamping products. So
what
now...
services?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
What is automating services?
So basically, traditional services, something, I mean, if we think of e-commerce as a basic example, rather than having to go physically to a market or supermarket to buy your goods, you can sit at the comfort of your home and you are able to buy things without. So for me, that is a service. Another one could also be like documentation, creating services that can help with those kind of things. So yeah, when someone refers to automation of services, it just basically means taking traditional services, like for example, another example is like going to a stockbroker. So instead of just having to physically go to receive the service of a stockbroker, you can sit at the comfort of your home and still receive the same service, but say with a robo-advisor. So that is what automating services involve.
All right. We hear that term startup a lot in the tech space these days, and many of a startup business works and operates. So what brought up about startups in the tech industry?
Also in the tech industry, because first off, startups have always been present just for a long time. But since the shift, I like to call it like the tech shift, where you now have a lot of products being developed. Since that shift happened, a lot of startups, people with ideas trying to, get their ideas off the ground to actually implement it. So I think, and also knowing that there are many, many people you could actually serve, because the thing with tech is that it goes beyond boundaries, geography. You can access people all over the world from just one part of the world. So I think that was one of the reasons that actually prompted people to say, okay, you know what, I can serve a lot of people I'm going to try and start this business or company. And the more people that are able to be served with different startups in the tech industry, the more investors are seduced into the industry. So you then also have money coming into the industry and more employment is being created. So all of these are incentives that have really encouraged development within the startup industry.
All right. Thank you very much. Tell us more about the startup sector, especially in Nigeria. How do they operate? Their basis of operation? Are they thriving? What solutions are they solving at the moment in the country?
So, I mean, Nigeria is one of the major hubs for startup, particularly in the tech industry, just in Africa, really. In fact, I was just doing a research recently, and I found out that Nigeria, as of 2020, had about 3,300 startups. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of activity within the startup industry in Nigeria. And when you talk about the services that these startups provide, they range from something such as financial-based services, or more so in the fintech industry, to something like property technology. Do you understand? So currently in Nigeria, we hear a lot of startups within the payment space. So providing payment services, and those companies or that sector is really thriving. I'm not going to name names, but everyone can even make mention of one company or the other that they have interacted with like making payments, cross-border payments or retail payments. So that's one area. Another area that is, I believe, is growing as well, but it hasn't quite taken root, is crowdfunding. And I say it's growing because at this point, it's not a case where we're still saying we don't have regulations as such. We do have regulations, but again, for the crowdfunding industry, particularly investment-based crowdfunding, because when we talk about things like GoFundMe, reward-based crowdfunding and all that, they do not fall under regulations. So when it comes to like you asking people to donate to give you money for your company in exchange for shares or other instruments, then you have to go through regulators. So it hasn't quite taken root. I still think it's on the up though. So it's something to look forward to. Another area that's also really scaled, that has scaled so far, investment technology. So we have many apps, where people can, set apart a percentage of their money periodically to actually help them grow their investments. So it makes that whole concept much more relatable to you and I, rather than having to go to elaborate meetings just to talk about investments. And also, these other ones I'm going to mention are things that everyone needs to think about, and really is a space I believe that hasn't really been tapped, and that is insurance technology. If you go to other parts of the world, insurance is a big deal, right? They ask you for your medical insurance, for your travel insurance and all that, but not so much in Nigeria. So I think the insurance technology space it's not widespread, say, as the payment systems space. So that's one sector that entrepreneurs can actually look to. It's just that, again, all of these come with certain regulations and licensing and stuff. Legal technology is also another area where, law in Nigeria, just practicing law. I'm a lawyer, so I can I can relate to a lot of things that I believe need to be automated, like services that need to be automated. So these are industries that Nigeria can take proper hold on.
Are yet to be fully tapped into.
Exactly. So many opportunities, really.
All right. Last week we had our tech news roundup, and I discussed a couple of things with my resource person, Ifemi Kolawole, and some of the things we treated were one very important topic was a recent report from the National Bureau of Statistics showed that the ICT sector contributed approximately 18% to Nigeria's GDP in the second quarter of 2022, and that was a 6.5% growth rate from the first quarter. And on that, we were actually discussing a bit about funding in the tech sector. So Nigeria does sit at the top of that ecosystem with funding, because a Nigerian company, a Nigeria fintech company, got $50 million in a deal just recently. It looks like it's seriously thriving for us, especially in Africa.
Oh yes, definitely is. Once upon a time, oil used to be the main revenue source for Nigeria, but that shift is happening, and that transition is seeing people who are software developers, who are computer scientists, data analysts, and just within that niche area of tech, really seeing them having to contribute to growth, financial growth for the country. A lot of people that are working here render their services to like companies abroad, right? And that way you're also allowing inflow of foreign currencies. Do you understand? Into the country. So there are just so many ways to explain how the ICT sector has contributed to the general growth of the economy, and it will continue to increase, really.
Yeah. Do you feel like the rules and regulations guarding the ICT sector in Nigeria is favorable to startups?
I mean, ICT regulations, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't really one centralized ICT regulations. There are bits and pockets here across different sectors. So I think one thing would be to have a proper centralized regulation that in one way or the other can apply to all sectors.
Of course.
Yeah, so that will definitely help. But if you're looking at industry by industry, many of these regulations have something that have to do with ICT kind of incorporated, that is to protect that industry. So yeah, I think one way to go about that to improve the ICT sector will be to modify it. I lost you again.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I was agreeing with you that one way that could help with regulations would probably be to unify across all industries.
Yeah. Yes. Even though what comes to implementation is a whole different thing, but unification definitely for the win.
Okay, so what industries are very friendly to startups?
Oh, good question. So for now, as I mentioned earlier, the payment system industry, some people can say or may say that it's saturated at the moment, but it's almost like a fail-safe for startups. Not in the sense that, you're just going in to make money, to actually serve people, because the population needs it. But another sector that is also friendly, which I think is coming up, is the property tech industry, where now people are not really in the business of having to physically, for example, go and inspect lands. So it's something that can startups can actually venture into, that will be, because again, regulations around property, real estate in Nigeria, they are fairly certain. So you can't create new laws. I mean, anyway, you can't create new laws, but my point is that you can actually see the laws you're dealing with in an industry like real estate. Another sector, again, this one is going to be within the fintech space, but more like investment apps, saving apps, also friendly to startups. A lot of people don't want to have to put their money in their bank account anymore. People are now saving on apps. trying to track shares as best as they can. So
Of course.
these are some industries that are somewhat friendly. I say friendly in this market sense, but when you
Okay.
really get into the process, and
Mm.
there's a whole lot of other conversation around, how these startups deal with regulators, and how, quite frankly, they need to ensure that at every point they are legitimate. You're not
Yeah.
lagging behind on your taxes, you're not lagging behind on your regulatory compliance and all of that, which takes work. So
Mm.
yeah.
All right. And what are the long-term effects of startups in Nigeria?
Oh, nice question. Long-term effects. If we go back to your statement about which I agreed with, about the impact of ICT, the ICT sector in Nigeria in terms of financial growth, right? Long
Mm-hmm.
term, one can, I guess, assume that if this continues, um, our financial growth, revenue making, uh, not just factors but sectors really will change. Do you
Yeah.
understand? So the energy sector, the oil and gas may have to, give way for newcomers,
Mm.
and then
Yeah.
long-term effect as well will be that schools will have to revisit their curriculum. It's just going to happen. Like, you have to teach your students things that will make them relevant in the real world. And I think tech is there. Like, at least have basic knowledge. A lot of people now want to get into the tech space, and there's a lot of coding here, data analytics here, and people don't know nothing about it. Do you understand?
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think long term, the educational system will have to shift a bit. Another thing is also employment. The more money is coming into the startup industry, the more people are being able to pay their staff. They're able to create more roles. Do you understand,
Mm-hmm.
within their startup for people? So I think employment as well, and then just overall growth in terms of exportation. Because I mean, you and I know that there are, so to speak, quote unquote, startups in Nigeria who serve other countries. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But they are headquartered here. So it's also going to be a possibility where we start to export our services, to all these other countries, which would be fantastic really for us.
Okay. I was saying, like, yeah, and those are the things, like exports. Those are the things we need
Yes.
to strengthen our economy.
Yes,
All
definitely.
right.
I
Let's
agree.
now. All all right. Now to funding. What are some ways startup businesses can access like huge sums of money in capital?
So, there are several ways. I mean, if you're looking at huge sums, so we're not going to talk about asking family and friends.
No.
We are going to look at things like crowdfunding, angel investments. There are so many accelerator programs now that grant a lot of money to startups. There's also venture capital. You can also access large funds through, I say, some governments, right? Some countries allow startups apply for certain types of funding, right? I'm not, I believe there are some. And then you can also, as I said, um, go for attend accelerator programs, and there are funding contests here and there. Like in the past decade, the shift has really made people just say, you know what, take my money. You have a
Yeah.
product, sell the market, and I will get my returns, and we have the right contracts and all that. I'm okay with you taking my money, which you would not have heard like in 90s, for example, where when the
Oh,
internet was still taking roots. So we've come a long way. So these are some of the ways people can actually, startups
how,
can
how
seek
do how
funding.
do people get access to angel investors?
So I mean, programs some programs usually have what will I say, external links. So if you sign up for an accelerator program, some, again, it's not all. If you sign up for an accelerator program, right, and you're kind of published as, okay, you applied but you did not make it, an angel investor is someone that can just say, okay, I see this company, right, I see their potential, right, I'm willing to invest in them. So I usually like to talk about giving yourself visibility, because with angel investments, it's neither here nor there. Do you understand? Unlike venture capitalists, where you can actually apply to these companies. Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where you can actually apply to these companies for them to fund you or back you. But with angel investments, I mean, neither here nor there. There are ways you can access them, but
Okay.
as I said, yeah. Yeah, you were talking about venture capital, or venture capitalists, right? Venture capital, is pretty much a type of financing where investors provide startup companies, some or access, because they believe that there is a long-term potential for that particular company. So this capital in itself is like, okay, and I'm giving you to start up your venture in essence. Sometimes venture in form of small, like, companies that help well-to-do investors to actually target, okay, this type of companies who you should invest in. So a lot of these venture capitalists can be, I mean, research has to be done, by the startup. You can't just you're not on the streets.
Yeah.
So you need to actually go out there, research them, and speak to your financial advisor. I always say that with startups, as much as there's the tax, legal aspect and stuff, a lot of times the startups keep their financial advisors, and it's very important. Do you understand? Because these financial advisors are better placed to advise you, not only on, okay, because they're in the industry, right? They know who has more favorable terms, because if venture capital comes with agreement. Do you understand? So meet your financial advisor, let them explain terms to you, let them tell you, okay, this term makes sense, this term doesn't make sense, this term is going to make you sell your whole company. Because particular financial terms, that's what I mean. Of course, these financial advisors work with lawyers in allowing startups to choose the best investors to go with. Because if not, a lot of startups have sold as I speak to you, a lot of startups have sold their companies. They don't even know they sold their companies.
Wow.
They signed off their companies to investors. Yes. And that's the sad part, because once and I don't blame startups on one hand, because one of the major challenge that startups face is funding. You then find someone who's willing to give you XY huge sums of money in the millions or even billions, and then you're like, okay, please, let's sign quickly. You don't know that maybe at the end of the day you're signing off your position to another person. So it's not just even about finding these venture capitalists or finding angel investors, or even going. Everyone now knows that getting bank loans is a scam. Everyone now knows, because when they give you their ridiculous interest rates, then you have to rethink, is this really what I want to do? So in the same way, I think people should be as cautious when they're also targeting or approaching angel investors and venture capitalists, because really there's nothing like free money. So yeah.
So what aside getting financial advisors, what are some other ways startups can avoid these mistakes, where they at the end of the day, after receiving funding, they end up maybe selling off a huge chunk of their companies? What else can they do in order to avoid this? You already mentioned the importance of financial advisors.
Yes, another important thing I believe startups should always think about is what you're getting investment for. You have a product, right? As a startup has a product. Have you protected that product? A lot of times, startups think, "Oh, I came up with this great idea where we're having the market. They've introduced the product to the public, but there's no legal backing. No, there's no legal protection, and so anyone can pick up that idea and go and register it. And this is where the law becomes very annoying for some, because the law will tell you, well, the person that registered it first. I mean, there's also stuff about equity, who expressed the idea first and all. But to avoid all that court hassle, one thing that I would suggest to startups is, if you have intellectual property that you have not protected, and when I mean intellectual property, the core of your business, so the product you're serving customers, or maybe something has to do with your service and it's not protected, please check with your lawyer. So that's one thing in intellectual property. Another thing as well is your HR. Startups, one of the major parts of startups, apart from funding, is your core team. So the core team in a startup will make or break that startup. So you need to really know why you're bringing in someone into the business. You need to know why you accept to work with a startup. You need to know your role in full, because some people are working with startups and they think, oh, I have XY shares. There's no documentation. Do you understand? And they're just working on faith. And I see it most times when these relationships break down and you ask, so what happened? Why didn't you people document it? They're like, oh, I trusted. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's going to be really, really a sad story. So protect, like, everything that is agreed upon should be documented. It's not like someone is trying to say, oh, I don't trust this person. No, so that you can make reference to that agreement later. So that's, document everything. Make sure you protect your intellectual property. Have a financial advisor. Have a legal advisor. So your HR, I think I've mentioned as well. And I think generally just work culture, which I hope long term will improve, because in the past decade, I think the work culture within startups has been it's either a hit or a miss, right? Because there's this idea of I don't want to say struggle with startups, but everyone is trying to make their startups make it, and in the course of doing that, many people forget the value of the people that you're actually people that are part of your team and the company in general. So because of that, they begin to overwork people. You don't listen to people and all of that, and then you lose your workforce. So work culture is also a very important thing in I'd suggest that startups pay attention to.
Okay, that brings me to actually a very worrying topic right now in the tech industry. So in August, African startups raised a total of $218 million from 38 fully disclosed deals, and two Nigerian companies topped that list with $50 million in a deal and $15 million in a deal. So if we are getting these sort of fundings, a lot of them. Also, earlier in September at Transcorp Hilton Hotel, Google announced that 60 African startups have been selected for their second round of its Google for Startups Black Founders Fund. But we are also hearing, and it's also being reported that, a lot of layoffs are happening. And I actually have a legal resource person in the tech sector who gave me an idea that it may be as a result of mismanaged funds and funds being diverted into maybe places where, it's not directly affecting the growth of the business, such as maybe excess marketing campaigns and other stuff. How do you feel about that?
It's a sad, stories. When you hear things like this, it almost feels like a negative side of the startup industry, but at the same time, because I mentioned earlier that long long term, I really hope to see the work culture improve. With startups, as I said at the very beginning, this idea of being small, the idea of being young, and the idea that, oh, we can get away with some things, we can deal with our structure later. No, like at the very beginning, as much as a task is going to be, it is important that your structure is set in place at the very beginning. Because when you have structure and when there's a chain of communication and hierarchy, then people know who they report to, people know who they're accountable to. If, for example, the CEO makes all the decisions and no one can question him, there's no auditing of the company or anything like that, then mismanaged funds can be the order of the day. So my thought about it is that it can be avoided, but because the startup industry in the tech sector is still like undergoing a trial and error phase, if you ask me, in terms of corporate governance, it's still undergoing a trial and error stage, because small businesses or small companies are making so much money at their stage. It would be important to set out your structure and organizational, operational, everything structure in place before you can.
But you have been seeing reports about layoffs happening in tech companies, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so what was that as a result of? Money is coming in, and we're hearing people are getting laid off. What could be the primary reason for that?
I mean, so layoffs happen for several reasons. It could again, let's go back to the statement I made that sometimes these companies sign off their whole business and they don't know. So you can end up as a startup getting huge sums of money in the billions, and you don't know if you do not. I hope that if you're getting money in the billions, you'll have lawyers to help you sign off on that contract. But if you're signing contracts or investment agreements that in exchange for certain sums, you're supposed to sign or you're supposed to transfer majority of your shares to the investor. In that sense, then you're going to, do you understand? If you're going to experience layoffs because the investor probably has, as part of the contract, wants to be a director, wants to be a majority shareholder, wants to make the core decisions of the company, and then all the people you brought in are laid off.
Yeah.
So you then don't have much of a say because the investor or the company, whoever it is that's giving the money, wants certain people to work as part of the company. That's one reason, though not necessarily. It doesn't apply to everyone. Another reason is, as you rightly said, mismanaged funds. When you're getting the money right, where you're not applying the funds to the right departments in the company, maybe you're overspending on one thing and all of that. And this would not happen if, say, you have a project manager, product manager as well, and you have an operations manager, key people that should make sure that things are in check. If not, money will just be coming in and flying out and nobody knows what's going on. And at the end of the day, you don't have money to pay people, and then you have to kind of let them go, like lay them off because you don't have the money. So the thing is that startups are used to functioning as small companies, but when small companies get tons of money, they cannot then manage it. Yeah. So that's just a problem. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Also, can you share with us a step-by-step process in which a startup can follow in order to successfully access funds for their startup business?
The thing with step-by-step processes is that I don't say it can be deceitful because it's no one shoe that fits any process.
Okay.
There are so many questions that have to be asked. I think it's, first of all, what nature of investment are you seeking? What's part of your company, or how many shares, for example, are you willing to part with? What platform are you using? What are you going through? Crowdfunding? Do you want to go to a bank? Do you want to apply to accelerator programs? So whatever you choose is what will then determine the process you're going to follow. If, for example, you're doing crowdfunding, for example, and you're trying to, in exchange for certain sums that the public give you, you're going to give them shares, then you have to look to the Securities and Exchange Commission's regulations on crowdfunding, which provides the entire process Do you understand? So each one of these ways that you can access funds have their own method. So startups should not feel like there's one way. There isn't really one way. Venture capital has a different way. If you're going to apply for a government-based style funding, you have to go to the proper ministry, for example. If you're going to get funding through accelerator programs, you have to apply when they open up the applications. So all of these things have processes. If you're going to engage with an angel investor, you have to have negotiations here and there. For example, the negotiations you're going to have with an investor, like an angel investor, you can't have that in crowdfunding because you can't have that in investment crowdfunding because the regulator has said this is how it goes, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But with an investor, an individual, you can sit down and say, okay, these are our terms, let's come to a compromise. So you need to know how what way you want to access fund before you can then talk about the steps.
All right. Can you give us a rundown again of these means where people can get funds from?
Okay, so I said one example is crowdfunding. And under crowdfunding, there are types of crowdfunding. There's the donation-based crowdfunding, like when you hear GoFundMe. There's no regulation that applies to that because people are just giving their money and they don't have people that give the money don't have any expectations per se because you're giving it out of the generosity of your heart. Another type of crowdfunding is reward-based crowdfunding. This is really what upcoming musicians, for example, who have their own enterprises use. Say, okay, we're trying to set up this we're trying to go on tour, for example, and I'm just out here, asking my, so to speak, fans to contribute, and you're going to get a souvenir exchange. Then there's also the loan-based. Here, a startup can ask public to lend them money, as debt, for example, and then they will pay them whenever it's agreed upon. Then you have investment-based crowdfunding, which is, I think, about the most regulated type of crowdfunding, where startups basically say we're seeking XYZ amount of money from the public, and in exchange for this investment, we're willing to part with, say, 20% of our shares or something like that. And then there's the arrangement that has to come with how that will be issued. So that's for crowdfunding. Another example, another way you can access funds is also going through accelerator programs. And these are all over the world, and they are not usually country specific in the sense that anyone from any part of the world usually is able to apply. So these accelerator programs are online all over the place. Research is very important because they have cycles. So you need to ensure that you apply within the cycle. And then you can also go through government funds, fund schemes for startups. And again, you have to also make sure you pay attention and keep your ears open because the announcements are made. The ministries that are usually involved with this expect applications from almost like you sending your pitch deck to the relevant department for them to say, okay, we see the potential. Here's your money. Do you understand? And then you also have venture capitalists who give you large sums of money to go ahead and develop your product startup, and in exchange for something that's to be agreed upon. Then you also have angel investors who you can negotiate with to invest in your business. And then I don't like mentioning banks because I mean, technically, you can go to the bank, but do that.
We know how that ends. Hopefully they'll start to step up. Like hopefully with the competition now, they would want a piece of tech pie.
Yes.
All right. What advice do you have for our listeners who are thinking of making a move into the tech space and those who would like to one day be startup founders?
Start. I'll say start because at the end of the day, a startup company always starts with an idea. You have the idea, you kind of have a rough plan. Nothing with startups, I've noticed, nothing, and I've experienced, nothing is ever fully complete. It's always in development. So once you have a plan, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, okay, these are the type of people that I want to be on my core team. A core team makes or breaks a startup. Your core team is very important. So key people that are going to manage certain part of your startups. For people that are sole, applying to be sole founders, don't focus too much on managing every aspect of your company. Delegate. It's hard to say. It's hard
but
to say.
Is it advisable to be a sole founder? Is it advisable to begin like that?
Some people do begin like that. I won't say whether or not it's advisable, because some people work better as sole founders. Because having co-founders has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of having a co-founder or multiple co-founders is that everybody is trying to bring business. Is trying to you have more hands trying to push the business forward, the company rather forward. But again, with that comes delay in decision making. 1, 2, if there's a disagreement, it can just cause such delay in making taking actions and decisions. Now, a sole founder obviously does not have the issue of delay. You decide what you want with your startup, but the thing is, it's just you there, so you might take longer to get where you're going to. So in one sense, I wouldn't necessarily say, it's great to be a sole founder, but just be aware of the consequences, the advantages, all of that come with being a co-founder and come with being a sole founder. Because being a co-founder will force you to learn how to solve disputes. Because if you're not able to manage disputes in your business, in your company, your startup company, it's going to crash. It will crash. So these are things that when it comes to either being a sole founder, co-founder, things to think about. Another thing I also suggest is get your legal advisors as early as you can. Don't wait until your company is about to run under or go under. Now it's time to get a lawyer. The lawyer will only do the best they can. They are not magicians. So get your lawyer early on. Don't just say, please come and incorporate my company and then leave. No. Make sure that you have a lawyer that is reading every agreement. I always tell people, before you sign anything, even if it's just your friend or a relative that's a lawyer, just let them read. Do you understand? So have legal advice, have financial advice as well, because a lot of time, one thing again goes back to mismanagement of funds. A lot of times these people don't know how finances work, but they just want to be CEOs. I'm not saying that people are perfect. No, I'm not fantastic with numbers. So give that task to someone who is. Delegates and pay the person for their. So what I usually tell startup founders is be ready to delegate. Make sure that you have the core team, your core team, because they're very important. Make sure you take care of your core team. Make sure you have proper advice, and make sure you don't be too rigid, in making decisions. Allow for some flexibility. And then on the legal side of things, which is, usually where I come in, make sure you're protecting what needs to be protected. Don't leave your intellectual property to the streets. Please protect it. Make sure all agreements are signed appropriately. Make sure meetings are had. See, another thing that companies don't understand is when you're incorporated with the CAC, that's not where your business with the CAC ends. So every year there are things you're meant to do to keep your business active with the CAC. So having someone who acts as your secretary to make sure that minutes, so board meetings are noted down, board resolutions are made. If you're filing your annual returns, make sure they are done. It's not after incorporation you just go and sleep and say I'm done with the CAC. So these are things like so And then after, when they're trying to then probably change directors or add a director, they're like, oh, you can't, so you have not paid your annual returns for 10 years.
Ooh,
And you're looking, and like, how much?
where do I start from?
So if you can avoid all of this from the very start, it just saves a lot of stress down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, our time is fast spent, Vivian. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. I had a great time talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun to chat with you about startups, fintech, and other related topics.
I really learned a lot, especially this last part about how you don't just register your business and leave it there. Yearly things have to be done with CAC in order to keep your business legit and running at full capacity. I think that was a very nice new information that a lot of us have not taken note of. And this is not even only important in the tech sector, it spans around all other business sectors. Thank you so much for the insightful information that you bring to Citizens Tech Talk with Mena. I hope to do this with you again another time.
Of course, anytime.
Tech Talk with Mena, bringing you news updates on digital technology around us, discussing the latest development and how technology can enrich you and make your life more exciting. Citizens Tech Talk with Mena, welcome to our world of technology. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 12, Citizens Tech Talk with Mena, expanding our global reach through technology.
The issues. Everybody respected that because it was coming from the president.
Purely behind it, the way the people took the